Well, hey everyone, my name is Sunny Brigham. I am one of the supervisors here at the Nutrition and Herbal Collective, working under Rebecca Snow. And today we are going to continue with our CNS Prep series. Last month we talked about methylation pathways, and today we're going to talk about bile flow. So let me check to make sure that we're live. We sure are. Okay, so let me just get my slides up and presented, and then I can share them with you. And we will go from there. My internet's a little slow, so you'll have to bear with me today. Okay, and let me share the screen. All right, and here we are. Like I said, we're going to talk about bile flow, and we are continuing with the CNS Prep series because we have an exam coming up in June, which I'm sure everybody is super excited about. More like super nervous. Okay, so what is bile? So first and foremost, this is going to be a really basic overview, and it's really just meant to kind of get you really thinking way back in the early days of school when you kind of learned some of these fundamentals. If you have a really solid basis of the fundamentals, you're going to do really well on the exam. So what is bile? Bile obviously is made in the liver, but we store it in the gallbladder, and we use it to break down fats. So we use it in digestion, absorption of some other nutrients, but primarily fats is what we use it for. Often the gallbladder gets removed because people get gallstones, or their gallbladder just isn't functioning very well, or maybe they're not producing enough bile, but it starts to create a lot of pain for them, a lot of diarrhea, nausea, and we'll talk about the symptoms in here in a little bit. But we try to, get people's gallbladder functioning the best that we can so that we don't lose such a vital organ, because it is pivotal in our fat digestion and absorption. We have fat soluble nutrients, vitamins A, D, K, and E are our fat soluble nutrients. So we need to make sure that we have enough bile to absorb those. We utilize fatty acids for brain function, for cognition, for moving hormones throughout the body. So being able to absorb fatty acids is really important to overall health and wellness. Those that don't have a gallbladder, like I said, are going to struggle to absorb healthy fats and those fat soluble nutrients. A pro tip though is medium chain triglycerides. Coconut oil is a medium chain triglyceride, is a really great way to help people absorb those fat soluble nutrients when they are missing a gallbladder. You don't need bile to break down and absorb medium chain triglycerides. So medium chain triglycerides is a really good vehicle to make sure that you're able to absorb those fat soluble nutrients. Bile is very sticky and thick, and it has a greenish yellow tint. So if you've ever had food poisoning or the stomach bug, and you've heard people say, oh, I vomited up bile, and it's very kind of like yellow orangish or yellow greenish, that's bile that they're throwing up or vomiting, which is really graphic, but you've probably seen it and maybe just never really registered it. Okay, so bile is released from the gallbladder into the small intestine in the presence of fats. So the cholecystokinin, which is a hormone that the body releases when we have fats present in the system, signals the gallbladder to actually start contracting and relaxing. And those contractions and relaxation kind of moves the bile into the upper part of the small intestine. And now here's a little quiz for you. Do you know what that upper part of the small intestine is? What's the name of that first section of the small intestine? And we'll just pause here for a second while you think about it, and maybe you're at home screaming it out, and I hope that you are. But the first section of the small intestine is called the duodenum. So the duodenum, or the small intestine, is broken into 3 sections. You've got your duodenum, your jejunum, and your ileum. The ileum, I always remember the ileum because you have your ileocecal valve, which connects your small intestine to your large intestine. So the ileocecal valve just kind of jogs my memory that the ileum is the lower part. I always remember the duodenum is the top part. And so the jejunum is the middle part. That is important that you know the 3 sections of the small intestine. So bile is actually released into the duodenum when we have fats present. In the presence of fat in the digestive tract, the body releases a hormone called cholecystokinin. Cholecystokinin signals the gallbladder to contract and relax, releasing bile into the duodenum so that we can start to emulsify fats, so that we can start to break them down, absorb fats, and utilize those really important fatty acids for overall health and wellness. Okay, so bile is actually recirculated as well. So this is important to know that once the bile goes through the duodenum, down into the jejunum, and into the ileum, and all of those fatty acids are nice and broken down and emulsified, and we've taken the nutrients that we can, there is an enterohepatic circulation pathway where we take that bile back from the ileum and recirculate it back to the bile so that we can reuse those bile salts, or we can reuse the bile that we have, so we don't have to create as much. If you're constantly creating more bile, you're probably not going to be able to keep up with the demand. So we want to reuse bile as much as possible. If bile doesn't get recirculated, then often you will see some fatty, greasy stools, some floating stools, things like that, the kind of symptoms of bile being present in the stools, so that recirculation really isn't working as well as it should. So what are some symptoms of somebody that has some bile issues? Maybe bile issues isn't the right word. Maybe gallbladder problems. Maybe they're not storing, or maybe they're not releasing enough bile from the gallbladder when we need it. So some symptoms that people might have when they're having issues with their gallbladder would be nausea after meals, especially fried or fatty meals. So if somebody goes out to a restaurant and let's say they have like French fries or something that's deep fried or just fried in a pan with lots of oil, or a very oily meal, they're going to feel really nauseous after they eat because they don't have that bile to help break down those fatty acids. So it just kind of sits there and it feels really gross and icky to the person. Pain up under the right rib cage. Pain between your shoulder blades. So this is a really classic sign of gallbladder issues. Bloating and constipation, but you can have those. I mean, bloating and constipation is linked to so many other issues as well, but don't discount that if somebody's telling you that they're having bloating and constipation. And then if they also say, well, I get really nauseous sometimes when I eat, I would really dig in and find out what are those meals that you're eating that's making you nauseous, because maybe that bloating and constipation is linked to gallbladder dysfunction and less so of digestive something or other. Like I mentioned earlier, floating stools. So stools can float because we have way too much fiber in our diet, but more often than not, if we have floating stools, it's because we have too much fat in the stool itself. And so it's going to float. We'll also see shiny stools, or you can actually see stools that kind of look like there's a little bit of fat or grease on top. So that's going to be an indication that we're not really absorbing our fats very well, which leads back to not having enough bile, which leads back to maybe there's a problem with either the liver or the gallbladder. And pale or yellowish stools. So pale or yellowish stools mean that our recirculation isn't really happening very well, and that bile is starting to get through. If we have the yellowish, is starting to get through into the stools. Pale stools is an indication that we're not having enough bile. So bile starts or helps to give some of that nice brown color to stools that we have. So if somebody has clay colored or really pale looking stools, that might be an indication that they're not producing enough bile, or maybe the gallbladder isn't functioning as well. And then some labs to assess. So there's always labs that we can look at. You can go off of symptoms. You can really dig deep and ask a whole bunch of questions of your client. And labs are really nice to kind of back up what you're seeing. So me personally, as a practitioner, I don't base what I do with a client solely off of labs, because labs only tell a portion of the story. You really have to look at symptomology and what the client is reporting. So using the labs in conjunction with the symptomology is a really great way to really assess bile function or gallbladder function. So alkaline phosphatase, typically we see this as low. You'll see this right before it's on your CMP, to your comprehensive metabolic panel, and you'll see this right in the same section as your liver enzymes, so your ALT and your AST. So alkaline phosphatase, more often than not, we see this low. A low value is linked to hypothyroidism or low zinc. But if you see this as high, that means we've got an issue with our bile flow. Alanine aminotransferase, ALT, is a liver enzyme. So it is a liver enzyme, but remember, we make bile in the liver. We just store it in the gallbladder. So just because it's not a specific bile lab or a gallbladder lab doesn't mean that we should negate it, because again, we make bile in the liver. So if the ALT is elevated, this could be other liver issues. You want to look at the whole person concept. You want to look at everything. But if you're seeing some symptomology of low bile issues or gallbladder dysfunction and ALT is high, it's a good indication that maybe they're not producing as much as they need. Bilirubin, this is going to be high in the labs for those that have low bile flow. So if it's higher, we have not enough bile. And triglycerides and cholesterol. So triglycerides, these are going to be really low for somebody that has low bile flow. We can have elevated triglycerides because of consuming a really processed diet, high alcohol intake, fatty liver, but this can also be, if it's very low, that means we might have some bile issues going on or some gallbladder issues. And then cholesterol. So some people are really excited when their cholesterol is low, but there's a such thing as too low. You actually need cholesterol. Like I mentioned earlier, fatty acids or cholesterol is a vehicle to move our hormones around in our body. And if we're not having enough cholesterol, and it could be because our bile production is too low because we can't emulsify or synthesize those free fatty acids and start to create more cholesterol in the body, then we don't have enough cholesterol in the body to move around those hormones. So in conjunction with bile issues, we might notice that we have some hormone issues, maybe a little bit too much estrogen or low progesterone or problems with testosterone or, a variety of other hormone issues that we might have as well. So take the symptomology, line it up with the labs and kind of go from there. Okay, so foods that support bile flow. So really, these are going to be foods that support the liver's production of bile. Bitter foods, you've probably heard this before, just bitter foods in general can help the body or help the liver create a little bit more bile. So your beets, your coffee, if somebody is not sensitive to caffeine or they're not sensitive to the coffee bean, coffee is a good bile stimulant. Dandelion greens or dandelion root tea. I typically use dandelion root tea often with my clients just because it's a really easy way to fit in. Most people are okay with drinking tea, maybe not so okay with eating beets. Dark leafy greens. So arugula is a really popular one that I use as well. You can also use the dandelion greens, kale, spinach, any of the dark leafy greens are going to be good. Artichokes, lemons, citrus peels like orange zest, and like bitters. If you use the herbal bitters, a lot of those will have citrus peel in it. So citrus peel like orange zest or milk thistle. So those are all really great ways to help stimulate bile flow in the liver. Maintaining healthy cholesterols and maintaining a healthy fat intake is also really important as well. Our body kind of creates this cholesterol homeostasis. The more we consume, the less we produce, the less we consume, the more we produce, but we need to make sure that we're consuming enough fatty acids or enough healthy fats to make sure that we're able to produce enough cholesterol to keep up with what our body needs. So these are some avenues, or these are some things that you can do to help support bile flow. Let me see, I think nope. Okay. So supplements that you can add in, I really like to do food first if I can. If somebody's missing a bile, if somebody's missing a gallbladder, like I mentioned earlier, often I'll have them take their fat soluble nutrients with a little bit of coconut oil, like a half teaspoon or a quarter teaspoon, so that they can start to absorb those. Ox bile, if they're missing a gallbladder, ox bile is something that you can support or replace. Bile salts, if they're really having low bile production. But more often than not, I really try to support the liver because, again, we produce the bile in the liver. So we want to make sure that we've got a healthy production of it. So I start there and then we kind of move downstream to the gallbladder as well. Okay. So like I mentioned in the beginning, this is part of our CNS Prep series. If this is your first time joining us, maybe you know this, maybe you don't. We have a CNS Prep course. It is part of our mentorship program. So if you are a member of our mentorship program, you automatically get this 3-month CNS Prep course. The CNS Prep course comes with all the study materials that you need in order to study for the CNS Prep. So it's all organized for you and what you should study, when you should study it, and how you should study it, instead of trying to kind of get nervous or anxious about, oh, what am I supposed to study? Did I study this enough? We kind of lay everything out for you. We have things in the vehicle of video. We also have it written for all the different types of learners. We have 4 practice exams throughout the CNS Prep. We also have 4 live study sessions. So leading the month into the CNS prep exam or CNS exam, we do 4 live study sessions. So everybody that's enrolled in our CNS prep course, we get together, we go over case studies, we go over fundamentals, nutrient absorptions. I kind of throw out some left field scenarios as a way to kind of get you thinking about the different things that maybe you didn't think about when you were studying for the exam. As a member of the CNS prep course, you also get access to our Facebook group, where in the month of April and May, we have CNS tips that we post throughout the week as a way to get you thinking about things that maybe you're not studying and maybe you should. And then, and that is our weekly study tips. So again, if you are a member of our CNS or our mentorship program, the Nutrition and Herbal Collective, you have access to this course for free. If you're watching this and you haven't registered, reach out to myself, Rebecca, or Kate, and we can get you registered or show you how to register for it. If you are looking for support in studying for the CNS, you're kind of feeling like you're flailing out there, you're not really sure what to do, you're feeling really nervous and anxious, you can join our CNS prep course. It's a flat fee of $197. You get all that's included, and we just formed study groups. So if you want to be a part of a study group, we will attach you to a study group so that you can stay on course and on track to successfully pass the exam in gym. If you have any questions, you can go to our website, nutritionherbalcollective.com, or you can shoot us an email at info@nutritionherbalcollective.com. All right, so that is all I have for you all today. I hope that was a really basic overview for BileFlow for you. If you haven't watched our methylation video, you can head on over to our website, nutritionherbalcollective.com, and you can look at all of our past videos, either from myself or Rebecca or Kate, and learn all about your practice, learn all about nutrients or herbs in practice, and start looking at our CNS prep series. All right, I hope you guys have an awesome rest of your day, and I'll see you around. Bye.